Thousands of ordinary Americans genuinely believed they had finally found their financial edge. A real stockbroker was actually calling them, someone who knew the market personally. He had a specific stock that he said was absolutely about to go through the roof. Every single phone call the brokers made was a carefully rehearsed performance. Every single stock was deliberately chosen to enrich the broker, not the client. By the time the government finally shut everything down, over $200 million had been stolen. Not through complicated financial engineering or sophisticated market manipulation schemes. Through a telephone, a very good script, and one core insight about human nature. Let's rewind. To understand the Stratton Oakmont fraud, you need exactly one concept: pump and dump. It is one of the oldest and most persistent forms of stock market fraud ever invented. And despite its age, it is also one of the simplest frauds to understand. Here is exactly how it works, broken down step by step for clarity. Step 1. Find a small, obscure company whose stock trades for almost nothing. A company nobody has ever heard of, with stock trading for literal pennies per share. These are called penny stocks, shares of tiny companies priced below $5. Step 2. Secretly acquire an enormous position in that stock before anyone else notices. Buy millions of shares at pennies each, spending a relatively small total amount. Step 3. Create the powerful appearance of genuinely exciting investment potential through aggressive cold-calling campaigns and carefully manufactured enthusiasm, through the sheer coordinated force of a professional, trained sales operation. Step 4. Clients buy in, demand rises naturally, and the price rises with it. The rising price itself creates excitement, which pulls more clients into buying. And more buying pressure pushes the manufactured price even higher still. Step 5. The firm quietly sells its own shares directly into that rising demand. Quietly and systematically, selling into the very demand the firm itself created, pocketing the enormous difference between the original penny price and the inflated one. Step 6. Without the firm's artificial buying pressure, the stock price collapses. The ordinary clients who bought near the peak are now holding nearly worthless stock. The firm made its millions. The clients lost nearly everything they had put in. That is the complete 6-step mechanism. Repeated, with different companies, many times. But there was an additional second layer of profit running alongside the pump and dump. Every single time a broker sold a penny stock to a client, they earned a commission. On blue-chip stocks, major established companies, commissions are typically around 1%. Stratton Oakmont's penny stock commissions were running at approximately 50%. 50%. Half of everything the client invested went straight to the broker. For every $10,000 a client invested, $5,000 went directly to the broker. That happened before the stock had even moved a single cent in either direction. The client needed the stock to completely double in value just to break even. On a penny stock that had been artificially inflated through coordinated sales pressure. And that was being held by a firm that had already decided internally to start selling. The commission structure alone made meaningful client profit nearly mathematically impossible, and that would have been true even if everything else about the operation had been honest, which, as we have established, it absolutely and definitively was not. The mechanism that made all of this possible at scale was the individual phone call, specifically a scripted, extensively rehearsed, and endlessly refined sales call. Jordan Belfort did not personally invent the concept of cold calling investors, but he did perfect a very specific and devastatingly effective version of it. The call began by establishing the broker's identity with a name, a firm, and a credential. Stratton Oakmont was a name specifically designed to sound old, established, and trustworthy. The firm had, in fact, been founded just weeks or months before the call was placed. The second scripted element was precisely manufactured and time-pressured urgency. This stock was about to move significantly, and the client was lucky to be hearing about it. The broker deliberately spoke faster than the client's mind could comfortably process. Information, excitement, and implied exclusivity, delivered in rapid and overwhelming succession. The third key element was a specific sales technique Belfort called the straight line. Every single objection a client raised was immediately met with a prepared rebuttal. "I need to think about it," already had a specific scripted answer waiting for it. "I honestly can't afford this right now," already had a specific scripted answer. "I need to ask my wife first," already had its own specific scripted answer ready. Every possible deviation from a completed sale was anticipated and specifically countered. The brokers were trained extensively and repeatedly on these exact scripts: role-playing sessions, live rehearsal, correction by seniors, then more rehearsal again, until the delivery of the entire pitch had become as smooth and automatic as breathing. The target clients themselves were not randomly selected. They were carefully profiled. Middle-income Americans, enough savings to invest, but not enough sophistication to question. People who desperately wanted to participate in markets they had always felt excluded from, who were genuinely flattered that a professional stockbroker had called them personally. The flattery itself was a deliberate, engineered component of the sales script. The Stratton Oakmont trading floor was unlike any conventional brokerage operation. At its absolute peak, over 1,000 brokers were working there simultaneously, all of them working from the same scripts, all selling the exact same stocks, and all of them earning 50% commissions on absolutely every single sale made. The culture at Stratton Oakmont was deliberately and aggressively, almost theatrically excessive. Company-wide staff parties that reportedly cost multiple millions of dollars each time. Bonuses paid out in cash, publicly and visibly, directly on the trading floor itself. The excess was entirely functional. Not incidental decoration, but a management tool. It told every single broker in the room, "Do this work, and you will get all of this." And it communicated to clients, "This is clearly a very successful, professional institution." The people who ultimately lost their money were not in any way naive or foolish. They were ordinary Americans encountering a professionally engineered and designed fraud. A doctor, a school teacher, a retired police officer with a pension to invest, a small business owner, an elderly widow with carefully accumulated savings. None of them had ever in their lives been pitched with anything quite like this. The broker on the phone was not reading from the script, he was performing it. The gap between reading and performing is precisely what ends up costing people their savings. Once a client made their first purchase, their name went straight onto a specific list. A list of people who had already proven to the firm that they would actually buy. That same person would then be called back again, and again, and again after that. For most victims, the fraud was not a single transaction, but a sustained, ongoing relationship. A relationship carefully maintained by the broker, for the broker's exclusive benefit. The Securities and Exchange Commission had actually been watching Stratton Oakmont for years. In 1996, Stratton Oakmont was formally and permanently barred from the securities industry, but federal criminal investigators had been building a parallel case at the same time. In 1998, Jordan Belfort was formally indicted on federal criminal charges. He made a calculated decision to cooperate fully with the federal prosecutors. He agreed to wear a recording wire and secretly record his former colleagues. He eventually pleaded guilty and was originally sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. He ultimately served just 22 months, substantially reduced due to his cooperation. He was also ordered to pay a total of $110 million in restitution to his victims. Decades later, only a very small fraction of that full amount has actually been repaid. The pump-and-dump scheme did not disappear or die when Stratton Oakmont closed. It migrated over the following decades to the internet, then social media, then messaging apps. The underlying mechanism is completely identical. Only the delivery channel ever changed. stock tips embedded in email subject lines and coordinated buy signals in Reddit threads, influencer accounts on social media promoting a coin or stock they already secretly own. The specific format has changed completely. The underlying fraud is entirely the same. What makes ordinary people vulnerable to it has also remained exactly the same. Urgency, a feeling of exclusivity, the powerful sense of finally being on the inside, being told you have information that other ordinary people simply do not have access to. When you feel like you are finally getting the real inside track on the markets, that feeling has been deliberately and professionally engineered just for you. The Wolf of Wall Street fraud ultimately succeeded because of one core human insight. People do not fundamentally invest their money in stocks or financial instruments. People invest their money in the stories that are told to them about those stocks. The story, not the stock itself, was what every single phone call was actually selling. And the story was always specifically about the client's own financial future and freedom. Their chance to finally win the financial game they had always felt completely locked out of. The specific stock being sold was simply the vehicle chosen to carry that story. And in every single case, without exception, that story was complete and deliberate fiction, written entirely by the broker, delivered entirely for the broker's own financial benefit.
If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more finance disasters, market crashes, and billion-dollar mistakes that changed history. The next one is even crazier.